Hello, guys, and welcome back. This is episode 2, numero dos, of Tales of a Middle Responder, where we're not first, we're not last, but we're somewhere in the middle. My name is Lex, I'm a real CSI, and we're talking all things crime scene, forensics, things about my career, my life, everything. You get my drift? So today, we're talking about probably the biggest thing I'm asked, I'm sure many professionals are asked, about how do we get in the field? What does it take? That sort of thing. We'll get into that in a second. Just a little bit of housekeeping. I graduate with my master's next Friday. Huge, I know. I got 2 more assignments that I'm procrastinating on. Senioritis. I will get them done, and then I will be done finally. I don't see myself going back for a master's degree, unfortunately. Just not what I'm willing to do right now. I do plan on going back to school for art or digital design or graphic design, things of that nature. So that's something I'm looking forward to in the future. But right now, I'm done with forensic degrees. We'll get into the degree thing later, but I just don't want to keep tunneling myself into a forensic degree if the field is changing and we'll talk about it. Sad news. My dog, my senior dog, who's the last childhood dog of mine, did pass away. So my sweet Scooby-Doo is no longer with us. Coping through, laughing. He was great. We had a lot of great years together. He passed at home due to old age. We utilized a service called Laps of Love where they do at-home euthanasia. Phenomenal. If you're sadly at the point where you're ready to let go of your pet or your cat, your animal, definitely, this is not sponsored. I've used their service, unfortunately, twice. And every time I'm met with extreme compassion, complete dedication and care. We'll talk about loss and pet grief and how somebody like me that works in death, works studying death, deals with loss. But I mean, it was phenomenal. They were amazing. It was amazing to reflect on his life and let him go so peacefully and so loved. So, Laps of Love, if you sadly need to utilize a service, I know they're here in Florida and they're phenomenal. They're absolutely great. But yeah, that's it. I have a couple launches. I have a shameless plug in the middle of this that's free for my students if you're listening. So we'll get into all of that. I'm going to start with my disclaimers as always. I am not associated with any organization, agency, nothing. This is just my personal thoughts, especially with talking about schools and institutions. I'm not going to use the school that I went to because it's just a privacy thing. If you know, you know. And I do share about them, but I'm not going to give direct locations and things like that. You know, I'm from Florida. I'm not going to talk about agencies that I interned at, places that I worked. Everything's going to be roundabout. So it just protects me, protects my job, protects everybody around me. Cool. All right. So we're going to get started kind of talking about why there's so much interest in our field, right? We talked about that in the first episode about CSI X with true crime. True crime puts such a spotlight on this field and it entices people to want to join. And I was a sucker. My journey started when my young self, who should not have been watching Dexter, was watching Dexter. Dexter was my gateway drug because I saw him on TV and I'm like, you could get paid for that? I was stunned. I'm like, no way you can get paid taking pictures of blood, putting strings up, taking pictures of crime scenes. I thought that was the coolest thing. Now, we weren't a law enforcement centered family, but law enforcement mattered to us. We supported law enforcement. And I thought it would be cool to somehow get into law enforcement without becoming a cop. I have a sister that's disabled, and I've been taking care of her alongside my family since I was young. So I always considered nursing because I had a knack for that, having a disabled sister. So I'm like, nursing. I wanted to make money. So I'm like, Legally Blonde. Maybe I could become a lawyer, a paralegal. I had so many career aspirations. And before that, I wanted to be a meteorologist because I was just a really big weather nut. I loved talking about hurricanes, tornadoes. I'm a Florida girly. I've been through 2003. If you're from Florida, 2003, Charlie, Francis, and I'm forgetting the third. I was literally in kindergarten. I remember them vividly because it was my first week of kindergarten and we were out for like 3 weeks because of these storms. I've been in all the major storms that has hit Florida. We've been here since early 2000s, so I'm a hurricane girly. I'm a weather girly. I'm just naturally interested in it. And I think we have some of the best meteorologists around. That's my personal opinion. I had a knack for science, and I wasn't necessarily good at science either. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but all I knew was Dexter was cool as hell, and I wanted to do that. It looked like it had all the traits that I was wanting to go to, so I'm like, why not? Give it a shot. It's in junior year of high school, and an admissions counselor came in from my future university, and they're talking and on about this forensics program. And I'm like, oh, like Dexter. And she's going on and on about how they have summer courses, free summer course for a private college that teaches solely in forensics. I'm in. I was a very non-traditional student. I was an artist. I had abandoned all those dreams, and I wanted to go to art school. I had so many people telling me I wouldn't make it in art. I didn't know color theory enough. I didn't know contemporary art. I had so many naysays about me wanting to go to art school. And I was just stuck. I really didn't know what to do. I was 16, 17, just trying to figure out who I was. And I was having an identity crisis about my future. I come from a middle class. I'm a first generation college student. And I didn't have any support or idea. I didn't have someone above me telling me what to do. My parents were very encouraging, and they wanted us to go into higher education. And the agreement was is if you went to school, you could stay at home. Just wanted to see us succeed. And I had a very loving and nurturing home from that. So I was like, all right, I need to figure out what I want to do, because I don't know what I'm going to do, where I'm going to go after high school. And I was the type of person, I had to succeed academically because I felt like that was my only value. So I needed something. So they went on and on about this. It was my US history class, and I was in awe. I was like, sign me up. I immediately got signed up. I got the little uniform, and I took a forensic science class, and it sucked. It absolutely sucked, because they threw me into a class that had prerequisites, and I was expected to do bloodstain, measurements and things, and forensic science principles. And I didn't know jack. I barely passed chemistry. I failed it and had to take like a remedial test or something to pass it. In general, like I did not pass it during my sophomore year, pretty much. I barely made it through high school when it came to sciences. I was only in art classes, so what do I know? So I get through the free class, and I wasn't deterred. I said, okay, I suck at science. I suck at math. But I really liked this. This was fun. This was interesting. And it was unique. So I said, all right, maybe I'll give it a shot. I was already, at that point, in photography as well. I should make mention of that too. I feel like I lump it with art so much. I was in Photo One, where we were doing portraits and different lighting, Photoshop and everything. And come senior year, I'm pretty sure I want to go for forensics. So I start sharpening my photo skills a lot. We shot a lot of manual, doing creative photography. We did painting with light. And we even did a darkroom and mixed chemicals. And I'm like, this is great, because if Dexter is taking photos with a camera, that's probably what I need to be doing, right? And anytime I looked up crime scene, I always saw them taking pictures. I knew what a DSLR camera was. I knew how to work it. I actually ended up buying my own at home because I love photography so much. So I'm like, all right, I'm getting somewhere. I have a skill. And nobody really tells you as a new CSI that you need to know the camera. I'm going to tell you as a new CSI, you need to know the camera. That camera is your truth and lie detector. That camera is your savior. That camera is everything. You should have your hand molded to that camera. Speaking of hands, I'm pretty sure my carpal tunnel has gotten worse in my right hand because of my camera shooting, so I'm getting that checked out. That's not very fun. But that camera is vital to your career as a CSI. And I knew that early on. I didn't realize the emphasis until later. And we'll get into it. It put me ahead of my peers in a sense. So I'm in high school, and I am an academic tryhard, trying to figure out who I want to be, what I want to do. I want to do forensics, and I'm Googling, and no one's really telling anything. And I don't know. You know what? I'm just going to wing it, like I always do. I just want to succeed. I want to make my parents proud. I want to make my family proud. I want a degree. So I want to go into this. The college had an Associates of Science in Crime Scene Technology. So I had my 2 months off from summer. Immediately after summer, started school. And I didn't stop school until 2019. So I went from my associate's to my bachelor's with no breaks. It was a nice even flow because I had so many skills I wasn't proficient in at the time, and I needed them for forensics. I wasn't good with math, wasn't good with science. So I took my gen eds, and I really focused hard in my gen eds and made sure that, all right, I'm learning biology. How does this apply to forensics? If I'm learning statistics, how does this apply to forensics? I made my whole world forensics because I knew no other choice. I consumed it. I tried to make parallels to it. And I think ultimately that's what saved me in my undergrad, is being so persistent on making comparisons to forensics from real life and real situations. So took speech, biology, anatomy, psychology, all my prereqs, and I was excelling. Not only because I thought that the class month structure was phenomenal for my learning style. I couldn't do the big, mega colleges with 100 people in an auditorium. That's not my learning style. I am just absolutely weird in that sense. So for me, I'm now in an environment that I'm excelling in. I'm putting in the time, I'm putting in the effort, and I'm actually learning something. And I'm not only learning something, but I'm making it enticing. I hated math, but I needed to know the math so I could survive forensic science principles because I took the class and I couldn't survive it. So getting thrown in the water and left to drown until I figured out how to float, it sucked. But God, did I need that. It just happened that way, and I don't wish that on anybody, but I absolutely needed it. So fast forward through my associate's degree. I finished 2018, finished with my associate's degree in crime scene technology, and now I'm ready to move into my higher classes. I had already started in some of these smaller classes, like just general crime scene photography, to finish my associate's degree, and I realized quickly between my transition into crime scene classes and my associates and then the upper level with my bachelor's, how more proficient I was in crime scene principles than my peers. I wondered why. Maybe I was just a nerd and I was really enjoying it. And they made me question why. I was bullied. No, backtrack. I've been bullied all my life by my looks, my face. You see my teeth? If you're looking on the video, got my teeth whitened. Because I was bullied relentlessly for everything that I have. Everything that I know. Everything I've done. Somebody has openly bullied me, made me a spectacle. I get bullied daily sometimes at this point with how my life has been. And I don't say that as a sob story, but it made my character grow. Here I am in my crime scene classes, and I'm like this. I can look outside and tell you what f-stop that is. And all my classmates are struggling. I had already my own camera. So I was allowed to use my own camera and no one was allowed to share with me and everyone else had to share. So we're doing outdoor photography because at the college I went to, it was all practical. So you get in, you got an assignment, go take photos of the whole school. Crime scene. There's a crime scene, find the tape, find the scene, get your briefing, everything in between. So I went and I'm going around from the street all the way in, taking my overalls in the dark. Got my tripod out. I know when I don't need it. I know when I need it. I'm going. And I was doing pretty good. I would help my peers, and I would like to think that I've always been very helpful and mentoring and nurturing. But they took it as I was a nerd, the normal bullying stuff. And mind you, I was the youngest in my course. I was 18, 19 when I was taking college. These individuals were 30, in their 20s, 40s. They were older than me. They were wiser than me. They were mothers. They were fathers. And they still picked on me because my skill outweighed them. And I never held my skill. I was always willing to offer advice, and I always was at school. So I would be like, hey, you want to study with me? And I remember just all the moments that we get the assignments back. And of course, my grades were pretty high. And just the laughing and the ridicule from my peers. And I felt so discouraged to the point where I almost quit because of how horrible my peers were. I sat alone. I didn't have anybody. But I was always willing to help. I didn't hold it against them. I wasn't raised that way. I never was. It just kind of made me realize that I was focusing too much on my peers and not on my own growth and education. And I needed to focus on me. And that was one of the biggest things I learned early on, is that your forensic education is based on you. How much you take is how much you take. You can only take answers and swap memory cards with your classmates for so long until you're out on a field, and you can't do that. It's 3 a.m. and you need to know how to put it on a tripod and paint that dark scene up nice. You can't expect Quizlet to help you. And definitely AI is not going to write all your reports in the field, right? I realized early on that the opinions of many did not outweigh the amount of work that I did. And I had to be proud of myself and the time I put in. And that was probably one of the biggest undertakings that I did for myself, and one of the biggest blessings that I had, is feeling so defeated by everyone that I had to pick myself back up. And sometimes that's the best principle in forensics to have. You get knocked down, you got to pick yourself up. You get a problem, you have to find a solution, whether you like it or not. So I found my solution. I kept studying. I kept going, kept doing what I had to do. Ended up taking up a job at the bookstore at our campus, and I was on campus all day. I ended up taking a job at a clothing store. So if I wasn't on campus, I was at the clothing store. And then I ended up taking on a job at a funeral home. So I was working 3 jobs in college. The reason why I ended up working at a funeral home is that I heard from a friend who was a dispatcher for the mortuary services that funeral homes hire staff assistants. And I was like, man, I'm a crybaby. Maybe I should try death out. This is the closest I'm going to get to death. This is the most important thing in life, is those death services. And I quickly found out that I wanted to be a funeral director. I definitely couldn't go to mortuary school. The closest one that I had would have been in Miami, and I'm way too far for that. But I quite quickly realized how intrigued I was with death and death processes. I worked as a staff assistant at over 13 to 15 funeral homes around the greater Central Florida area, and it was an amazing time. I found a passion for serving families. I found my rhythm with terminology and talking about death, and I was able to get hands-on with decedents, help the funeral directors. I was there at the cemeteries with them for their committals. I was there at the chapels until 12 a.m. with the families as they grieved. I was there for funerals when no one showed up. I was there for funerals 100 showed up. It really impacted me because I saw death in a different light. It gave me a different perspective on crime scene. And if you're a student, I highly, highly recommend. Your local funeral homes always need help. And you can definitely be an intern, be a staff associate. They always need somebody. I would highly, highly recommend calling your local funerals up and getting your exposure of death in a very controlled and peaceful environment. I can't stress it enough. My experience at the funeral home changes how I look at things. Like today, when I picked up Scooby's remains, I get a call and they say, hey, his ashes are ready. I'm like, ashes? It just rubbed me the wrong way as someone in grief. And I remember in the funeral home, the funeral director's telling me, yeah, we'll talk about bodies and dead this and dead that. But when we're talking to families, it's decedent. It's cremated remains. It's loved ones. There's a way to talk about death that makes it sting a little less. And I realized that today. I realized that every day. And that time in the funeral home during my undergrad was vital. And I took those principles and applied it to what I was doing in school. How I looked at scenes, how I looked at mock scenes, how I looked at photos. Do we have dark humor still? Yeah, we absolutely do. But I saw things in a different light. I hit so many turning points in my undergraduate degree, and I realized quickly that this may not be a perfect field, but if I can get through this, what else can I get through? Oh, I wish I could tell that little redheaded forensic nerd in college that there's way worse out there. But I have the confidence, and I say, you know what, I can do this. And I think that's what saved me in my career, is being able to tough it out. The coursework could be difficult. I freaking barely passed forensic chemistry. It was so hard. I studied at work at the bookstore. I studied at funerals. Oh my God, I studied everywhere I could. I just wanted to make it. I I did everything I could. And as I spent more time at the bookstore, that was pretty much my primary job throughout college, even with the funeral home and the retail shop that I worked at, I grew a connection with the faculty and staff, and they became family and friends. I would see them every day. They'd come to me. They'd come in and talk to at the bookstore. They'd see me studying. I started volunteering at the school, started joining organizations, started fronting new endeavors because, like any field that forensics is represented in, we're the redheaded stepchildren. And unfortunately, I was quite literally a redhead. I had burgundy hair, and I hated that forensics was not appreciated or taken care of at the school. And not saying that it wasn't, but, nursing, they had radiology, they had athletic specialties. I wanted forensics to be a part of what they were doing, and we really weren't, because a lot of people in forensics either didn't care about the degree if they were a student, or just didn't have the time or didn't have the care. And most forensic people are just really introverted, and there's nothing wrong with that. So here I come and I start volunteering. So now I'm working at a funeral home, I work at the bookstore, I'm studying, I'm working at a retail shop, and I'm volunteering my time. How I did it beats me. But all of that gave me foundation. Everything I've told you since high school, all the way now into my bachelor's, from my associates to my bachelor's, foundational. Foundational. Forensics is all about foundation. You have to find your place in it, and you have to see it through. Well, as I'm wrapping up my bachelor's, we had to intern at any facility, agency that would take us. So I found an agency. They were the only agency with a crime scene unit that would take me 2.5 hours away from where I lived. And I said, F it, I'm signing up. I got signed up. I was told I'd be in the crime scene unit. I was so excited. I was the first person in my class to get an internship. And I was so ready to be done. I'm so ready to get it done. I pretty much had to move to that other city for 2 months. And I had everything planned. Absolutely wrong. I thought I did. So here comes we called it an externship. Externship, the different meanings. I'm going to keep saying internship because most places have internships, or they call it intern programs. So here I am. It's time to go to the city. I have a friend who went to a college near that city, so I stayed in her dorm under the rug. Like, I threw her a couple $100 and stayed in her dorm because she wasn't there for the summer. And I hid from her roommates. I was like super quiet. I had to try to hide from the tow trucks and make sure my car didn't get towed. And I go to my first day, and I'm doing a riding along with the cop. Great, having a good time, going around, absolutely amazing. Now my second day, I'm in crime scene, and I get there, and they're like, "Oh, hi, we didn't know we're having an intern. This will be your only day." I was crushed. I had just moved, and at the time, that unit did not have the capacity to have an intern. They didn't have great experiences with interns before, and they weren't interested, quite frankly. And I was told that I was going to be in the crime scene unit the entire time with a couple ride-alongs. I was crushed. And I was like, well, I'm here, and I came all this way, and this is my background, and this is what I really want to do. My first day of internship, I ended up seeing an autopsy, and they were like, "You're going to be fine?" I said, "Have you seen an embalmed body? An individual who had an autopsy done, and the embalming process after? Have you had to deal with the smell of decomp and embalming fluid? Because I have. I'm ready for this. I'm born for this." It was probably the coolest experience ever because the doctor was so interactive with me. And the CSI I was with, I'll never forget him. He's just the sweetest person. And he's like, "Yeah, you're actually really interested in this. You want to get Chick-fil-A after?" I'm like, "Yeah, let's go." So, we talked, and I'm like, maybe I can get another day in. I think I ended up getting another day scheduled. And I would work, my internship at the time was required 40 hours a week. So at that point, I had left my retail job, I was gone from the bookstore, and I was just solely working at the funeral home on the weekends. So I would work 3 12s because I was on their patrol schedule, work 3 12s and 1 8. And then I would come home, drive all the way back to my home city and work at the funeral homes, and then drive all the way back to my intern city. So it was a lot, to the point that it was really lonely. I remember I only could afford to shop at the dollar store to get snacks because I didn't have money. I had barely enough. The funeral home was barely paying me like $10 an hour. And I wasn't working much at all. If I was lucky, the funeral homes were scheduled when the funerals were. So if there were no funerals, you didn't have work, which unfortunately there is always funerals, but it depends on if other staff associates would take them. So here I am in a city that I knew kind of alone, homesick, and kind of feeling let down because I thought I was going to be with the crime scene unit. I thought my internship was going to be different. I worked so hard. Why is it like this now? And I said, you know what? When I go into that crime scene unit, I'm going to bust my ass and get the most out of it. And the moment I walked in there, I was ready to go. I made sure that if I had downtime, I either was drawing or reading. I was reading the Game of Thrones books at the time, and then I was reading through different forensic books that they had. Anytime a CSI was doing something, I got up and went with them. If they were processing a vehicle, I was there. And they started letting me get more hands-on. They were like, okay. I remember we super glued a vehicle with the super glue strips. I don't know if you guys have ever used them. They're like these little packets, and you open them up, they release the super glue, and we did it in the interior of the vehicle. And I remember doing that. Different car processings, firearms processing. They had a NIBIN tech, so I was watching her test fire, and I was like, wow, this is great. And I'm starting to build the connection with them, and my once a week or once every 2 weeks turned into a guaranteed once a week. Then it turned into twice a week. And I just kept trying to learn from everybody, talking to everybody, hearing their story, saying hi, smiling. I had business cards, and I would give them out to all the CSIs had them, supervisors. I would give them out to different officers that I would come across. I was so determined. I was not going to come all the way to the city, 2.5 hours away from home, and not have something out of it. I'm so determined. I was able to go on a couple death scenes with the officers I did ride-alongs with, see the medical examiner staff that was out, and all I did was just enrich every moment. Just like I did in my degree, everything I did, I turned it into crime scene. And I kept a little log. I still have it. And it had a log of the name of who I was with that day, where I was at, and what we were doing, what calls we went on, that kind of stuff. And it was incredible. I turned something that could have easily been, you're in crime scene day, you're done, into something that was worth my while and worth their while. I ended up wanting to just look at their chemical cabinet. We learned about all these different chemicals. I wanted to see what they had. And I saw that their safety data sheets, their SDS, was not updated. So I said, do you mind if I go through your chemicals, see what's expired, and update your safety data sheets? And they're like, yeah, that's awesome. We would absolutely need that. And I sat for a couple shifts and got that safety data sheet done. And they had an updated safety data sheet, and I had their gratitude. I cleaned up the lab when they were done. I was just available. I was just coming in bubbly, and I think that's what the feedback was and what they appreciated was I was just very happy, very energetic, bubbly, and so willing to learn. And by the end of my internship, I was floored with the amount of love I had from them, and I respected them so much. And everybody that was a part of my time learning is so valuable to me, and I still remember them by name, by face. They are all incredible. Some of them are still in the field, some of them are still there. So if you're watching, I hope you know that you're the reason why this little CSI exists, and I am always grateful for that time and for you giving me a chance. Because I know how it is to be burned by bad interns. I've had it for me. But the fact that y'all gave me a chance, I will never, ever forget that. And I really worked so hard to get that chance. Then comes that I hear that they have a job opening. And I'm like, oh my God, I want to apply. And they're like, we love you, but we need an experienced CSI. We're sorry, but we're going to call you back when we get a new job application, job opening. We'd love to have you. And I said, you know what? Okay. The opportunity is not there for me. but it's time for me to go. And I had finished over 320 hours of intern time. Absolutely insane to do that for 2 months straight for 40 hours a week. And I was grateful. I left that city feeling renewed. I wanted to go back so bad. And they even helped me. I had a phone interview with another state because at that point I was applying towards the end of my degree at different states. And they gave me some of the best advice ever. Ask questions. Ask them how big their unit is. Ask them what their take-home exams are. Ask them what their lab procedures are. Ask them things that normally people would not ask. And get real with their questions and make them specific so you could show them that you know what you're talking about. You've been there. Your intern time gave you that experience and knowledge. So I was like, wow. And I did it. I ended up in one of the few candidate pools for it, got dropped halfway through the hiring process. It just wasn't a fit. And I'm glad because I definitely did not want to move states. I'm glad I stayed where I'm at. So I finished my bachelor's 2019, July 2019, and I don't know where to go. I have this great internship that I left with no job. I just got turned down by the other state. I was applying like a mad woman. I think I applied to like 20 to 30 different agencies, like mad. I kept a log of each one I applied to because the advice that I got from where I interned at is they're going to know where you applied to, and you need a log of that. So I kept a log of it. So here I am, August 2019, and I'm lost. The funeral home, as much as I loved it, had very poor management, and it was getting very, very toxic, and I had enough. So at the time, my now husband said, "Hey, I have a job for you at a restaurant." All right, I'll go work at a restaurant. That's fine. I didn't want to go back to retail. I wanted to try something new, something different. So here I am, fresh out of college, applying everywhere, and here I'm working at a restaurant. And if you've ever worked in a restaurant, you know that is a godless place. And I was just doing my best to stay out of trouble. And I had really practiced that throughout high school and college. I didn't want to be a party girl. I knew the implications of drug and alcohol abuse and substance abuse because I was told at a young age, especially as I went through college, my professors advised me, best advice I ever heard. If you don't want to say it on a polygraph, don't do it. If you want to be in law enforcement, you're going to be asked, have you done drugs? Have you been around drugs? Have you been with someone who's drinking and driving? Have you been around someone doing something illegal? And I didn't want that. And I had dropped a lot of friends throughout that process, and it kind of came the same way coming out of college. Being in the kitchen, we would work until 1 a.m, go out and hang out, and come back to work at 9. And we were young and we were just having fun. At the time, my husband and I had gotten together, and it was my first relationship in a while post school. So I was just having fun. And I had to tone myself back a little bit. I had to make sure I refused to drink. I was straight edge. I didn't want to drink. I wanted to stay sober. I didn't want to be around the drugs. Not my husband was not around the drugs, but kitchen culture and just seeing the real world and seeing a job, seeing the world outside of school, because I was so consumed with school. I was a little jaded. And I was like, no, step me back. I worked so hard to get this degree. I will not let a night out ruin my career. And I'm so glad I did that. Maybe 6 months after graduation, I get a call from a supervisor at a local agency. And they were like, "Hi, I was given your number and I'm interested in speaking with you. I heard that you're a good candidate for a CSI position." And I'm like, what position did I apply for? I didn't apply for this. You know what applied me for this? My 4 years of hard work got me this. This individual came to my old college and talked to my professor and said, "We just got 2 new contract CSI spots. We would love to have a student. Give me your top 3. My professor looked him in the eye and said, "I got one. It's Lex. You look at her stuff and you tell me." And she spoke so much blessings over me. She spoke so much love over me that I always thank her. because had she not put in that word, I wouldn't have this position that I am now. I was stunned. I didn't apply for this position, but my volunteer, my time interning, my efforts throughout school, despite everything that I went through, all the bullying, all the hard classes, everything that I put into this degree was seen. I had a mentor that mentored me well, and she put my name up where it mattered, and I locked in the job. I went for the interview, and I remember bringing in a portfolio, and it was a board interview with 3 individuals, and there's a CSI on the board who I love to this day. She's absolutely the best. And the 2 supervisors. And I come in, I'm so nervous, and I look different. I no longer had red hair. I dyed it black. I made sure my earrings and my clothing was conservative, my makeup. I wanted this job so badly. I didn't want what I looked like and who I was at that moment to impede on what I was doing. I was an alternative girl. I liked metal, and I had my red burgundy hair, and it wasn't like crazy red, but I didn't know how conservative that department was. So I dyed my hair black, and I said, you know what? Here I am. I'm ready for this job. So we go into the board interview, and we're going back and forth. They're asking me different questions, and I'm just answering them to the best of my ability. I couldn't tell you what I was being asked, but I had a portfolio of all of my academic honors and some of my class assignments. So it's being passed around. I'm like, here's my portfolio. And the CSI that was on the board points out a picture of a decomposing chicken. It's a store-bought chicken, not real. I mean, it's real, but it's not a chicken. It was ethically deceased, okay? But it's a decomposing chicken. And I remember her asking, why is this in your portfolio? That gave me my green light. It gave me 10 to 15 seconds to start talking about, well, this was the lab on decomposition, and this is what I enjoyed about that lab, and this is what I learned. She was like, wow, okay. And I walked out, and I'm like, all right, I think I got this in the bag. And then I went for poly 1, my first polygraph. Then I got my drug screening, my conditional offer, and then my second polygraph. Quite an intense. The second polygraph's not as bad as the first. First is like 3 to 4 hours long. And I felt like I was a criminal in that. But because I stayed away from all my bad influences, it was a breeze. I didn't have to worry about saying, well, I was around this and I did that. I didn't have to do that. I was like, wow. It was worth not getting involved with certain people and certain things. And once I got through and I got the job and they gave me my start date, I was like, was this worth it? Did I do it? I absolutely did. I have a very unique journey because I did get that job offer 6 months post graduation. But the job that I took, I didn't apply for, I didn't try for. All of my effort and everything that I did granted me this position. And I am forever grateful for that type of work. And that's why I'll circle back to, you have to kind of pave your own way in forensics. People can't give you the answer. You have to make yourself the answer. When they ask, when you can ask them at an interview, what's your ideal CSI? They should see you in that seat based on your work, based on your personality, based on your resume. They should look at you and say, you're the definition of a good CSI. That was my goal. I wanted to be well-rounded. I turned my experience from the funeral home, talking about chain of custody, decedent care, biological hazards, universal precautions, and I turned that to be related to crime scene. The moment I started turning my basic interest, photography and art, all the way back in junior year to forensic relevance, is when I started building my portfolio. And I used it to my advantage. I used everything that I was into, everything that I knew, and I did it. You have to look at yourself and what you do in your journey and use that to your advantage. We all have very unique traits. There is no one CSI that's the same. I think that's a beautiful thing because there are so many branches in the tree of forensics. So think of forensics as a big tree, right? You have the trunk, which is the word forensics, science and law. And now you're applying that to anthropology, odontology, science, crime scene investigation, medical legal death investigation. You're adding it to these different principles, and it's becoming something more. You're building, it's foundational. You need to know the foundations of anthropology before you get into forensic anthropology, right? You need to know the foundations of science before you can start looking at DNA, looking at cells. You need to know the foundations of pathology before you can get in and become a pathologist. This takes time. In your journey in forensics, you should expect to build foundations. The weaker your foundation is, the quickly it will crumble. The stronger you build yourself as an individual in education, in academia, the stronger you build yourself overall, you will not falter, even under the most impossible circumstances, even under the biggest of weight. Your skill will outmatch and outdo yourself, and you'd be surprised at what your work does and what your work tells you to do. So, got into my job, and we have 4 phases of training, and COVID hit. Womp womp. COVID hit. And life was weird for a while. Being a baby CSI during COVID was odd because we didn't have the same amount of calls. We weren't going out to things. It took me, I would say, about 2.5 years to get a normal call volume. And I bounced around through multiple shifts. I worked day shift, midnight shift, evening shift. I worked at 3 a.m. to 11 a.m. That made me physically ill. And I really was starting to feel a little isolated in what I was doing. All I was doing is work, work, work. And at the time, my husband, who was my boyfriend, I remember coming home from a midnight shift, and we worked 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. I'd go over to his place, stay a couple hours, and then I'd leave when he would have to go to work. And I remember I walked in, and he looked at me and he said, "If you're going to be on midnight shift for your whole career, we're not doing this. If you want to be with me, I don't want to be on separate schedules." And I remember thinking, how rude. How dare you tell me how hard I worked, what shift I'm going to go work? But I heard him, and then it clicked. I listened. I realized what he was saying. I was so consumed with what I was doing that it was putting a strain on my family. I was so consumed with work and just wanted to get on all the hot calls. And the biggest advice my mentors in crime scene have told me in my unit, your big calls are going to come, girl. And they're going to come hard. They're going to hit hard. They're going to hurt. They will come when they do. Don't jinx it. Let it ride. And I realized that I needed to strive for a work-life balance. And I really wanted to be with him. So I said, all right, I'll see what I can do. Ended up going on day shift, which worked out really good for my home life because I'm very close to my parents. Obviously, like I said, I have a disabled sister, so I wanted to be available, and ended up getting bumped to evening shift, which wasn't too bad, and ended up back on day shift and where I've been for the bulk of my career, fortunately. And I am grateful for every shift that I've been on and everyone that I've worked with and everything that I've learned. But in my haste of 4.5, almost 5 years of focusing on education and then adding 3 to 4 more years of being in forensics, I realized I needed to put my family first. We were going through a global pandemic, and nothing mattered more to me than my family. They were all I had. I couldn't see my friends. I had already lost so many from college because I had cut so many off. Some people just didn't understand my journey. I was a little selfish and was protecting myself too much, and I cut people off I shouldn't have. People cut me off for no reason. And I just wanted to protect the circle that I had. And I am so glad that I did that because happily married. So I'm married. My relationship with my friends and family that I do have is strong. And that's ultimately what got me through many of my hard days. I have had a lot of crazy cases. Again, I'm not going to go into details. That's not what this is about. But I'd be lying to say that I didn't have hard cases. And my family was the backbone. Had I not built that relationship early on, I don't know where I'd be and what I'd be doing right now. Because it was life-saving. And many, many times it was life-saving to have people I can go to see, people that I never let go. And that was the biggest thing is I'd given up so much for forensics since junior year of high school. I need to give for myself and for my family, my friends. I have to slow down. So obsessed with the success. And it could have killed me. And I would have never known it until the bullet hit my head. I needed to make sure that I took care of the people around me and myself. And almost 5 years, I'll hit 5 years in December, like end of December into January. It is foundational. We go back to the term foundational. Yes, you need a foundation of forensics, but your foundation of yourself and others around you, your love life, your people you're with, that is what's under forensics. And if that is crumbling, it's really hard to make the forensics foundation work. There is nothing more important than your family and friends. Jobs will come and go. This field will always be there. You can be hungry for it, but don't starve people around you because you're so hungry of getting into a field. There's a work-life balance to be found, and everything is different. I had many privileges, and I had many disadvantages. Everyone's situation is different, and how you respond to that reflects on your character, your nature, and your situation. So my journey has been up and down roller coasters, but I would not change it for the world. I started in this field not knowing who I was, what I wanted to do. I started in high school questioning everything. And I researched and I researched and I researched until I found my way. I get so many messages on and there's nothing wrong with this. So if you're listening, and if you're listening because I directed you to this, because it's hard to tell my story a million times. And as much as I want to be a mentor for everybody, it's very exhausting telling the same story all over again, right? I get messages from students. Hi, I'm so-and-so. I'm going to this very specific college. I have this very specific background. Tell me what to do next. There's multiple problems with that. One, have you assessed your situation? You're giving me a very specific background. I'm not a counselor. I really can't tell you where to go. I don't know your financial situation. I don't know your background. I don't know what foundations you have set. And for me to do that through an Instagram DM is very, very difficult. But I have a solution we'll talk about later. And two, I can't tell you where to go. This requires research. I am more than happy to tell my story and give you resources, but I cannot give you the answers. You have to find that on your own. Forensics already is evidence-based. If you're looking for something, you'll find it. You have to look hard. You can't expect one person to give you, here you go, this is exactly how you do it. Being a forensic student, the initiative and the drive that you have will put you above the rest. And if you're seeking answers from someone and just waiting for somebody to tell you what to do, you're already 2 steps behind. I highly encourage you, if you're a student listening to this, I say this with love, find it out on your own. I wish there was as many resources that are out there right now. There's multiple people on Instagram. There is so many different sites. And they're out there. Take the time and research it. Research yourself. See what you like. See what you're strong in. Research forensics. Research what schools are around. You're going to go on a deep dive. But that is a part of the journey. You have to, most of everyone that's in forensics has put in the work. And there is no free handouts in this field. If you think you can just go to school and walk into the field easily, you're absolutely wrong. Because after your schooling comes internships, comes volunteer time. This is the meat and potatoes of everything you do in your field. Interning and getting experience. So as I wrap this up, my camera's dying and everything is just going to crap behind me. I wanted to bring up the opportunity of mentorship. It's really important to me to grow young individuals who are as interested as I am and maybe doesn't have the resources, the time, or the privileges of being able to study as hard as I did. I worked my butt off, but some people can work their butt off and still not get to where I was at They might not have the resources, they might not have the knowledge. So what I'm doing is I'm opening up, and it will be open when this podcast posts, a short-term mentorship and a long-term mentorship. The short-term mentorship is pretty much you fill out a Google form, you tell me your story. I send you a packet of resources that I've handmade of where to go for information, what to do, kind of gives you a guideline how to figure out and decipher some information about the field, gives you some gateways to go. And then I'll also address, oh, you tell me that you're going to this university, I'll address like find out classes, are you familiar with the camera? You want to go into forensic psychology, how have you looked into this? And try to help guide you. The whole point is I'm not trying to give you answers. I can't give you an answer. But what I can do is just try to help. I don't want anybody to feel as lost as I did in schooling, and I want to make a difference in this field. So this service that I'm giving is absolutely free. If you want to donate, I'll have a Ko-Fi up where you can buy me coffee. If you want to do a long-term mentorship, there'll be limited spots available for a fee. I still have to figure out where that fee is with the type of work that I'm interested in doing with it, because that requires more time of me, more resources, and that kind of nature. But pretty much all my student resources will be free because I don't want you guys having to pay on top of all the things that you already have to pay for. My student resources are important to me, and I want to make that available to you all. So the short-term mentorship, that's going to be open as this releases. Definitely go sign up. Go to my Instagram before the crypt and go to my Instagram bio, check out my latest post, and apply. Let's talk. Let's chat. Let me try to help. I'll send you resources. Now, does this guarantee like me and you chatting every day? No. You'll have to kind of pay for the long-term mentorship because I can only do so much with what I have on my plate. But I want to be a resource and give resources, and that's what I plan on doing. So if you made it this far, that was my free plug. It's a free service for everyone to enjoy, and I'm here to try to make things happen for this field and for students that are in this field, people that follow me. I have a lot of students that follow me. I hope that sharing my journey, what I went through, is impactful to you, that you resonate with that, you see my journey in all of its glory, ugly and great moments, and do something with it. Be someone. Forensics needs you. And if you feel like you don't fit, you probably just don't fit in the specialty you're looking in. I promise you, there's so many specialties that need young, energetic minds. We need more STEM. We need more support. Show your interest in your forensic sciences. If then something's not working out, look at yourself, look at your skill set. Try somewhere else. Try a different specialty. You'd be surprised at where you're going to end up. And I wish you the best of luck. If you're a professional and you're listening to this, thanks for hearing my story. You've made it and you don't necessarily need this advice, but definitely if you can, share this with your interns and remind yourself that we all came from these backgrounds, these humble beginnings, and they are the things that shape us. You don't realize how impactful these moments are until you're either at the end of your career or at the beginning. When you're in the middle, none of this matters. You're like, I did it, I'm done. But I challenge you to look at your own journey. Share your journey with an intern. Share your journey with the new CSI. Look at your schooling and the things that you did to get to where you're at. Every one of us puts in hard work every day. What did you do to get here? I would love to have that conversation. I'm going to have an Instagram post about it. There's going to be a little questionnaire up if you want to share your story and stuff. I'm grateful that I can share mine. I hope it inspires somebody, it helps somebody. But that is the end of episode 2. Thank you all for listening. Please sign up for the short-term mentorship. Share it with students. Share it among your friends. Share it with somebody that loves forensics. And thank you for being here. The next episode is going to be all about my business. You can tell I did not talk about my business because it's a whole other episode. My business started during my career, and you can already tell that there's some foundational art things that went on that really helped me get to where I'm at. So we'll talk about my business on another episode. It's a hot topic, hot commodity. I felt like this is more important, especially with the fact that we are starting school soon. School semesters are kicking up. It's back to school. So this is more important than my business, but we'll get to that in another episode. Thank you so much for listening. This is Tales of a Middle Responder. My name is Lex, and I appreciate you. Stay safe, and I'll see you on the next one.